Howdy y'all, Jordan here. There hasn't been a video in a while because there hasn't been a Jays home game in a while. They've been on the road since the last one and they're still on the road for a few more days. And as far as the Leafs go, let's not talk about them. But all the CHL leagues are down to their final two teams, so I figured it's a good time for an update. So let's talk a bit about that. So let's start in the OHL and let's start in the Western Conference with this year's Western Conference champion, London Knights. They were the second seed this year. 92 points. They began their playoffs by sweeping the number 7 seeded Owen Sound Attack in 4 games, and then they took on the Kitchener Rangers, who they beat in 5 games. The Kitchener Rangers, by the way, who took out the number 1 seeded Windsor Spitfires with a sweep in round 1. So they Dragon Slayed the Dragon Slayers, I guess. And then it was off to the Sarnia Sting for the Western Conference Finals, and they beat them in 6 games. So we go to the East in the OHL, and the Peterborough Petes, who out of all these teams may have had the most interesting season. They kind of started out slow, looked in the beginning like they might not even be a playoff team, but they made some acquisitions. They got Brendan Hoffman about a month into the season, and he's like one of those, like, where would they be without him players. Later on, they pick up Owen Beck, obviously. They pick up Avery Hayes, those guys from Hamilton, and they turn it into a contender. So they had a pretty pedestrian-looking regular season record, 35-29, 2-2, only 74 points. But it looks like a lot of those losses came early on before they made those big acquisitions. So Peterborough's a tough team, man, and they have shown it in the playoffs. Peterborough played Sudbury in round 1. They swept them. Then they faced the number 1 seeded Ottawa 67s, the most points in the OHL, and took them to 6 games and beat them there. And then they faced the North Bay Battalion, the number 2 team in the league, in the Eastern Conference Final, and took them to 7 games after being down 3-2. The Petes won games 6 and 7 to take that series and advance to the final. So when we pick between those two teams as to who's going to win, do we pick the consistent team in the London Knights, or do we pick the juggernaut team in the Peterborough Petes, the team that's come on stronger a lot lately? It's really hard to say. The Petes have taken out a few teams that I didn't think they would take out. London, faced a lot of teams that I knew were probably not stronger than them, so they were kind of expected to beat them. But Peterborough surprised some people, and I think it's possible they surprised people against London too. So this might be my one upset, but I think I might be taking the Petes in 7, guys. Moving on to the Quebec League now, and the top team in the Quebec League happens to be the team from Quebec's capital, the Quebec Remparts. 109 points in the regular season, and they are the only CHL team to this point to have swept the playoffs so far. They swept the Charlottetown Islanders in round 1. In round 2, they swept the Rimouski Oceanic. And in round 3, they've swept my adopted Gatineau Olympique as well. So sad to see my Olympique go. I think that was the first time I've actually seen the Olympique not play so well, is when they played those games against Quebec. But yeah, Quebec 12-0 in the playoffs so far, and they have made it to the Quebec League Finals. Now, facing off against Quebec in the Quebec League Finals is the HALIFAX Mooseheads. Now, the Quebec League playoff format is a little bit different. When they get to the Final Four, they throw out the conferences and just rank the remaining 4 teams, 1 through 4. So that is why the teams facing off in the Quebec League Final are both in the same conference. Quebec was number 1 and Halifax was number 2. Sherbrooke and Gatineau were the top 2 teams in the other conference, and they were both eliminated in the league semifinals. I can't really call it a conference final in this league. So, but Halifax, 107 points, just 2 behind where Quebec was, and the number 2 seed in the league. They swept the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles in round 1. They took the Moncton Wildcats to 5 games in round 2. And then, of course, the aforementioned Sherbrooke Phoenix. After Sherbrooke went up 2-0, Halifax won the next 4 games and took that series in 6 games as well. So picking a winner between Quebec and Halifax, it's hard to go against the team that has swept the playoffs so far. Hamilton was that team last year, and Windsor took them to 7 games, but Hamilton still won that series. I don't think Quebec is going to sweep Halifax. I think Halifax is going to be their toughest test so far, but it's hard to see Quebec not winning that series. I think I'm going to pick Quebec in 6 games. So we've talked about some pretty strong teams so far, but we have not yet touched on the team that has the most regular season points in the CHL this season. That, of course, is the Western Hockey League's Winnipeg Ice. 115 points. That is crazy. They swept the Medicine Hat Tigers in round 1. The Moose Jaw Warriors took them to 6 games in round 2, and then another sweep in round 3 over the Saskatoon Blades. Pretty much a cruise for these Winnipeg Ice. And Winnipeg has a very formidable opponent in the Western Conference. For the second straight season, the Western Conference in the Western Hockey League is won by the Seattle Thunderbirds. Not too far behind them, 111 points, very impressive total. They swept the Kelowna Rockets in round 1, they swept the Prince George Cougars in round 2, and then they took the Memorial Cup host Kamloops Blazers to 6 games to win the Western Conference title. Now, it's very hard to pick a winner between these two teams because I don't want to take anything away from the team that I don't end up picking, because both of these teams had incredible seasons, 115, 111. It's very hard to choose between those point totals. But I think Winnipeg is just going to come out a bit too strong on this side. I'm going to pick the Winnipeg Ice over the Seattle Thunderbirds in 6 games, I believe. So those are my picks for the championship series. There is one other team I have to put a spotlight on, even though their championship hopes are done. They are still not quite done in their season because they are hosting the Memorial Cup in a couple of weeks. I'm talking, of course, about the Kamloops Blazers. Now, Kamloops being in a league where Winnipeg got 115 points and Seattle got 111, Kamloops may have been a bit overshadowed, but they still did a very good job finishing second in the Western Conference behind Seattle with a very decent 103 points and picking up a couple of sweeps in the first couple of rounds of the playoffs. They swept the Vancouver Giants in round 1. They swept the Portland Winterhawks in round 2 before meeting Seattle in the conference finals and bowing down to them in 6 games. So Kamloops is a very formidable host team for the Memorial Cup, and they may surprise some people. We'll see. Keep an eye on your listings. TSN will be televising every series from Game 3 through to the end of each series. I don't know why they started Game 3. It's weird. They did that last year too. But it's what they do, I guess. So you will be able to see each trophy get presented at least. And the Memorial Cup will be on TSN as well. So all that pomp and circumstance, you'll be able to see it in your very own living room. That's if you don't have tickets, so yeah. I'll give you guys another update when all the championship series are done. All the Game 7s are scheduled for Victoria Day, May 22nd, and then the Memorial Cup begins on May 26th. All of that tournament is in Kamloops, so we'll keep an eye on that. Should have some more Blue Jay vlogs for you as well in the coming days. Hoping to go to 2 or 3 on the next homestand, so there will be some content coming to the channel. It's been a bit of a dry spell, but we're getting back at it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will see you on the next adventure. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.